if you are familiar with the previous video on the string ensemble, you'll also remember the mixer section there. Now, the mixer section is just divided up into 4 faders, which represent the different microphone recordings. So we have stereo, close, mid, and far. Now, you can create a concoction of these different microphones or use individual ones. What's great about the different microphone recordings is they can create different levels of intimacy. So let's just have a quick listen to the stereo one by itself. You will notice that as you load up another microphone recording, the memory has to continue increasing, and that's because it's loading up a new set of samples, a new set of wave samples. The Symphony series is very heavy on memory. You know, they're very, very big packs. So either run it off a very fast hard drive, or you can put it directly on your internal hard drive rather than an external one. Let's take down that stereo one for a second. Let's just compare the two. You can feel that that's much bigger and broader. This close one, bit more intimate, kind of feels like you're sitting in with the orchestra. Then you have mid, so we can imagine mid to be maybe halfway down the concert hall. Getting a bit of distance there. And then far is probably right at the back in the upper circle. You're really hearing the tail end of all those reflections. And again, these are designed to make you feel like you're in those different spaces, so use those to your advantage. Let's go back to the default stereo setting for now. Now we have also some effects. We have EQ, compression, filter. Let's start with the EQ. I do think that this is a great place to start. If you're not familiar with EQing and you just want to boost some frequencies, you've got low, mid, and high bands. They are all bell shapes. If you're not sure what a bell shape looks like, it's like this. So I'm just going to grab one of these 4. We've got 4 bells in this EQ, and they just look like this. The mid band, so we have sort of a low band, a mid band, and a high band. The mid band is the only one that you can control the width of. So something to bear in mind when you're using your EQ. Now, let's turn that on. Let's bring that down in volume a little bit. That's got a bit loud there. And let's just play around with this EQ a bit. Let's take down some of the lows for a start. Let's boost some of the upper mids. So we'll just bring this to around 3K. And let's give it a bit more of the high frequencies also. So let's bring this all the way up to, bring that up to 12, a bit of air. You can really hear the breathiness of the brass players. So if you want to make it more intimate, then again, that's something you can do also. If you can hear the players actually blowing into their instruments, that makes you feel like you're that bit closer to them. So let's try without the EQ and then with it on. A lot lighter and airier. You can almost hear some of that spit coming out the brass instruments. Right, next we have reverb. Now, reverb is currently off. There will be a natural reverb that was picked up in the room that the brass ensemble was recorded in. In this case, we can add more if you want, so we can just turn it on by clicking on that little dot. Same for the EQ. Got a nice cathedral there. You can feel that it becomes a bit more expansive. It almost becomes a bit thinner. It's not so direct to your mono signal. It doesn't feel as powerful. When you add reverb, it spreads the signal. It sort of picks up, it definitely picks up all the reflections of that room, and they kind of gel into one new sound. So got a few options here. Cathedral chamber, room large, room small, hallway, underground, some outdoor ones, and some kind of unnatural or synthetic reverbs, although they're all synthetic, obviously, because they are in a computer. Now, the reverb microphone position is also quite important. The further away, the more of those later reflections it's going to pick up. So let's try flicking between far D and close A. Let's just increase the amount of reverb here with the mix. So you're really far away there. You're really in the back of that cathedral or church. Close. And let's flick again between the two. Feels a bit more grand with the far D, a bit more epic. Close A. Feels almost a little bit more muffled. So we have the size of the room, so this will change the size of the space that it's in. The delay is how long it takes for the reverb to actually kick in. So if you imagine yourself shouting in a space like a cathedral, a lot of time people refer to it as echo, and that's because it takes a long time, especially if you're standing at the back of the room, you're shouting towards the front of it, for the reflection to bounce off that wall in front of you, which may be 30, 40, 50 meters away. And that delay is why people think of reverb as echo. Now we can emulate that delay by increasing this right here. So let's turn it all the way up just for a dramatic feel. There you go. So I'm hitting the note and then you'll hear the reverb quite a lot later. Let's bring down the mix so we get a bit more of the dry and a bit less of that wet reverb effect. Now that sounds quite unnatural, but quite cool, something quite rhythmic about it. So let's bring it down to, I usually set my pre-delay anywhere between 40 to 100. And we're getting a little bit of that bounce. The nice thing about pre-delay is that it does help separate the reverb from the dry signal, so it does make a bit more space in the mix, something to bear in mind. Another thing that's really useful with reverbs is the high pass and low pass. So you can cut out certain frequencies that you don't need from the reverb. Now, the high pass will cut out the low frequencies and the low pass will cut out the high frequencies. It seems fairly counterintuitive, and I know it doesn't make entirely all the sense that you'd want it to, but this is just the way it is. So why would we want to cut out certain frequencies? Well, low frequencies can interfere with the mix, and having too many low frequencies in your reverb can make things quite muddy. If you want to keep things as realistic as possible, I'd probably suggest not touching the filter. But if you're finding that things are getting a bit muddy and a bit mixed up, the filter for the reverb could be your best friend. So let me just hold a note down, increase the mix, and see how that sounds. I like to always be quite extreme with my settings, so I allow my ears to pick up on the changes that are happening when I am playing around with parameters. Here the reverb is much thinner there. So you have some different options, and it's the same with the low pass. That would do the same but to the high frequencies. So you can really use this reverb as a palette for your sound design. You could move quite far away from what the real or original recording would be. Okay, next let's move on to compression and filter. Now, we did talk about this briefly in the string ensemble. I won't go into too much detail with the compressor, but let's take a look at the filter. Now, the filter is similar to the one we saw on the reverb, but this is filtering the dry signal rather than just the reverb signal. Now, it's a LPF, which is a low pass filter, which means that it's cutting out the high frequencies. Let's turn it on and have a listen. We can also add resonance, which is a peak at whichever point the cutoff is, and it will follow it. Now, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, let me show you on an EQ. If this is our low pass filter, and that's what a low pass filter would look like, the resonance is a peak that appears at the frequency point at which the cutoff is set, or the low pass filter is set. So you see I get this frequency point, it focuses in on that, and then if we pull it down, it follows it just like so. It creates this kind of odd resonant feel, which does sound very unnatural, but some people like the sound of it. And again, this area of the mixer is dedicated to sound design and helping you get more control, making things sound a bit more interesting and personal to you. Starting to feel a little bit more like a synthesizer at this point. Alright, well I hope you found that useful. We'll be taking a look at the woodwind ensemble in the next video.